A voice called Arin Valen's name from the open doorway of an empty house. He stopped in the middle of the deserted street, raised his camera, and aimed it through the doorway. A table stood inside, set for one. Before he could step closer, the same voice called from a boarded house across the road. Above both roofs, a rusted town loudspeaker crackled against the gray mountain sky. Arin Valen was a travel writer who documented abandoned towns, recording empty buildings before weather and neglect erased them. He had reached this mountain settlement late in the afternoon with a camera, an audio recorder, a paper map, and enough supplies to stay until morning. No cars stood along the road. Dust covered the windows. Yet someone, or something, inside two vacant houses already knew his full name. The first incident still had explanations. A local might have seen his articles, followed his car, or hidden a speaker inside one of the buildings. Arin left the houses and followed the only road marked through the northern end of town. He filmed each intersection and drew a circle around the route on his paper map. When the sun dropped behind the ridge, he checked the page again. The road beneath his boots continued between the houses, but the printed line had vanished from the map. Even the circle he had drawn now enclosed blank paper. Arin tested the disappearance instead of trusting his memory. He photographed the blank section, walked back to the previous intersection, and compared the mountain peaks with his earlier footage. The landmarks matched, but the road no longer led to the same place. It returned him to the first open house. Inside, the table was still set with one plate, one glass, and one chair. A white place card rested beside the plate. Arin Valen had been written across it in dark ink. He crossed to the boarded house and forced its swollen door open. Another table waited beneath a film of dust, also set for one person. The plate was chipped in a different place. The glass was cloudy, and the chair had a torn seat, but the place card carried the same name. Arin checked a third house, then a fourth. Every dining room contained a single setting. Every card said Arin Valen. His camera captured each table, yet whenever he replayed the footage, the letters blurred as soon as they filled the frame. The loudspeaker above the street snapped on. Static rolled between the buildings, followed by a flat voice describing a childhood memory that Arin had never published, a red cup broken on a kitchen floor, and the lie he had told to avoid blame. Arin placed his recorder on a stone wall and let it run. The speaker announced another memory, this one about a promise made beside a hospital bed. No resident, reader, or hidden observer could have learned either detail from his public work. Arin moved 3 blocks away without speaking and stopped beneath another loudspeaker. He covered the recorder's microphone, wrote a private memory on the back of his map, and folded the paper so the words could not be seen. The loudspeaker repeated that memory almost immediately. He tore the note into pieces. A speaker farther downhill finished the sentence. The town did not need written evidence or a spoken confession. Once, it had fixed on Arin Valen. It could reach into memories that belonged only to him. An elderly resident appeared at the end of a narrow lane just before dark. The resident stood behind a rusted gate, one hand gripping the metal bars, and warned Arin never to answer a voice that called from behind him. Before Arin could approach, his own name drifted from the house at his back. He kept his mouth closed and turned without responding. The doorway was empty, but the place card from inside now lay on the front step. Arin tried to return to his car without using his name. He marked the nearest corner with white chalk, walked 1 block, and found the same mark waiting on a wall ahead of him. To test what controlled the change, he set his camera on a windowsill and spoke his full name once. Roof lines slid past one another behind him. A straight street bent around the square, and the bell tower shifted from east to west without making a sound. When he checked the camera, the movement was visible. Saying his own name allowed the town to rearrange the streets around him. He repeated the test with a single word that was not a name. Nothing moved. He knocked a bottle from the windowsill and shouted without identifying himself. The chalk mark remained in place. When a house behind him called, he refused to answer. The route stayed stable, but the voices spread to more buildings, each repeating Arin Valen from a different room. The town followed identity, not noise. His real name gave it control of the streets, while the loudspeakers proved it could recognize him through memories he had never shared. Searching for a route that did not require him to identify himself, Arin entered the municipal office beside the square. Dusty ledgers filled a cabinet behind the front desk. One registry listed previous visitors, along with arrival dates and home addresses. In the earliest entries, the handwriting was clear. Farther down, letters had faded from names, while dates and addresses remained dark. Arin compared several entries with archived clippings stored in a drawer. Photographs showed empty spaces beside captions. Articles described journeys without naming the person who had made them. The visitors had not simply disappeared from town. Their identities had been gradually erased from public records. Arin laid his camera, notebooks, and published articles across the registry desk. They were evidence of his work and of the identity the town was stripping away. Carrying everything would slow him on the unstable roads, but leaving it meant abandoning years of proof that Arin Valen had traveled, written, and existed. He kept only the audio recorder, the map, and one blank place card. The rest remained under the municipal office lamp, while the voices outside repeated his name from every house on the square. The town's loudspeaker system ran through a control cabinet in the back of the office. Arin connected his recorder to its corroded input and made a short recording using a false name. Before playing it, he wrote that false name on the blank place card and placed it beside the microphone. He pressed the button. The invented name rolled from every loudspeaker in town. The houses fell quiet for one breath. A door opened across the square, and a voice inside called the false name instead of his. Arin played the recording again and ran. More houses took up the false name as he crossed the square, passed the chalk-marked wall, and reached the northern road. The streets tried to redirect him, but they could no longer settle on the person moving through them. Each time the recording sounded, another doorway called to the identity he had supplied. Arin left his camera and notebooks behind, refusing to speak the real name that would have protected his work. While giving the town control of his route, he reached the boundary before sunrise. As the first light touched the ridge, the road appeared again on his paper map. The bends matched the route back to the highway, and his car stood where he had left it. Behind him, the loudspeakers continued calling the false name. Arin drove down the mountain carrying only the recorder, the altered map, and the knowledge that the town had accepted a lie long enough to let him escape. Weeks later, back in the city, Arin began recording a warning without saying his own name. Traffic hissed over wet pavement outside his apartment, and pedestrians moved beneath the streetlights. Before he identified himself, a stranger on the opposite sidewalk stopped and turned toward his window. Another person farther down the block did the same. Neither could hear the recorder through the glass, and no one had spoken Arin Valen aloud. The warning leaves one question unresolved, whether it describes a danger that ended in the mountain town, or a method the danger now uses to find the next person. On the recording, Arin finally says his name. Outside his window, every face on the sidewalk turns at once.